there. Do you know what? I can't even see you all now. Oh, Dave, I see you down there as well in my left-hand corner. I saying to Wendy earlier, that's why we're keeping this casual. Like I know we started off with Wendy asked me, was I nervous coming on? And I said, well, Jesus, I don't do Zoom. And my first two were Stefan and Javier, and
you did a good job.
Yeah, but coming on here with a load of ladies, it's perfect. You can just
we're not world record holders with you.
Deirdre, bow down. You're our queen, Deirdre. Now we'll bow down in front of you. But what I was going to say, so yeah, look, and the big thing too is because people are asking too, how did this start? So I'll just give you a bit of background. I don't see him on here. This is recording, so this is for him now. We say, oh, you see Cherry's coming in. This would not have started, I'll be really honest, if it wasn't for Martin O'Grady. And the reason why it wouldn't have started if it wasn't for Martin, because Martin got in touch with Aisling Hoey in Munster Development, putting me forward to coach out in the Munster Development squad. So I went along, and then we'd COVID. We did the first one. The second one, you did up a PDF file for the jumpers to keep them engaged. And then the third one is like, what we do is I can't send them any more Word documents. They'll be wrecked. So I said, okay. And I know Antone loves to talk, and he wants to talk and wants to talk about high jump. So I got on to Aisling and said, listen, what do you think of having Antone on? He's a Limerick fella going from juvenile, how he got from juvenile to elite level. So we did that, and then it was Martin again who said, open it up to everybody, So then it got on to Dave. Thumbs up there, Dave, thanks a million. And Dave opened it up even further, and that's where it went. And that was called the good, the bad and the ugly of high jumping. And then from there it just took off. And then it was Anton's contacts as well with Javier and Stefan. And then also, this is an idea, Liam had been in touch with me a couple of years ago about getting a high jump community going. So this really is for a high jump community where we can just collaborate and connect and just raise the bar, as Steve Smith keeps saying, and it's yeah. So as I said to Dave, I don't want this to be a one man or one woman show, and Deirdre, I had a chat with Deirdre today, and I'm going to put you in the spotlight here there, Deirdre. Deirdre said she's all on board to shift it at her level, where each of us, everyone has a role to play. Like Deirdre has reached to the top level, so she knows the path to guide the youngers through, but what it takes, we're going to talk to Deirdre now in 2 minutes of what it takes to make that shift, So before I go on any further, to keep this open for everyone, put messages in the chat box, take over at any stage, and if you've any ideas, work away, throw them away as well, and what myself, Liam and a few others were saying, when eventually they let us out of school and we can go out and play again, we might start getting a few high jump events going. They don't have to be competition events, but maybe high jump to music, or just where we can come together and jump. I spoke to Deirdre today and Wendy earlier about you jump better if you jump in groups. If you're jumping away on your own, it's boring. You're not going to push yourself more. Deirdre, you were saying that's the big thing you really enjoyed the most about jumping over in Germany. And Wendy and the girls in the north really have shown that by coming together to jump, it raises the bar as well. I'm talking a bit too much now. So will we start?
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to start with a video again, but I didn't add any music to this one. Okay. So there's a bit of commentary in it because tonight, people are going to be wondering who's on. So we've Deirdre Ryan here. I had originally themed this called the High Priestesses of High Jumping, and I was told, take that out. Janet would take that. I said, the goddesses, no, take that out too. And I was like, geez, but Janet, it's full moon tonight, so we've got it, the witches.
The loonies.
the loonies of high jumping, no. So I just went, look, legendary leaping ladies, okay? So we have Deirdre Ryan, who's our national record holder of 195, very, very close to 197, Deirdre. We could, even
I know, we
might Photoshop that one in, let it hold there a little bit. And then we have Janet, who 192, who took part in the Olympics in 1988. And Sharon hasn't come on. If Sharon, is she on?
No, I don't.
Yeah, Sharon.
Let me see if I can.
Text her, yeah. I put her into the video as well. So we have Sharon Mc Peake as well, who jumped 190. I think she narrowly missed out on going to the Olympics too. You can fill me in there, Wendy, on that. And then my lady up here, sorry Ursula, I'm picking you out now again, it's my favourite. The legend of the Irish schools record book, Ursula Faye, like still blows my mind. She's there, and Wendy as well. Wendy Phillips, 182. And Wendy, you're going to tell us all your story, and you're going to do most of the talking tonight now as well. So I'm going to start now. I'll share my screen here.
Oh, Sharon says she's there. I can't see her.
She says she's here, is she? Oh, she needs to talk then, so she can jump up a bit. Do you want to say hello, Sharon? I can't see her now.
She says she's waiting.
She's waving.
Oh.
Is she here? Sharon. Yeah, Sharon, if you're here, if you can talk, you'll jump up the screen a bit more.
Oh, you need to talk. Okay.
Yeah, so she can hop up. Right, I'll play the video anyway, and we'll start off. Where are we? Weeping Ladies. Oops. I'll pull this out so you can. I'll leave the commentary on, okay? So this one takes a while.
Ursula. Look how young. So that's the t-shirt Molly Phillips gave me. I didn't have any shirt to wear.
And there are ones where you clear the bar too, Janet.
Oh, that's good. That's always helpful.
Yeah, sorry about this, but I put this in because we can, just to show the younger crowd that.
Where's Caroline McKinney?
Yeah, you're way over it. Yeah.
Where did you get that from? What is that?
That's the 1984 Northern Ireland Championships event from Forum. Do you remember I sent you the DVD? But I can send you the link. It's a link now. You can go onto YouTube and see it, the whole thing.
I didn't remember seeing any high jump on it.
Oh no, there's 10 minutes of high jump on it. There's Sharon, you, Kathy Scott, Debbie, Janet, and Bridget, the fabulous Bridget Corrigan. This is Ursula jumping 81, I think, wasn't it?
She was like about 14, wasn't she?
You were maybe just 15, were you?
15.
Look at her run. So gorgeous.
Nice jump.
Oh, there's Sharon. Are you there yet, Sharon?
This is 190, was it?
Could be, I don't know.
I think Sharon had just cleared 190. This is now 192.
Well, that's when she started telling that cameraman he was a dirty old man.
There's no commentary on this one, so you can talk this to Janet.
That's from the Olympic trials.
191. And you did 192 in the Olympics then as well, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I couldn't find a full picture then.
I don't think it exists.
This was a great era of jumping, Olivia.
Yeah, wasn't it? Yeah.
You know, when you see all of these girls at
Yeah.
the heights they were at, I think we forget.
Yeah.
You
That's
know,
not all of them.
we live in
There's
the present, I think, very much when we're coaching these days.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm actually just in awe of all the different girls we had jumping
Yeah.
up at these heights.
Yeah.
You were brilliant, ladies.
This is the one we're going to Photoshop, Deirdre. Somebody stick out their hand and we'll keep the bar on.
Yeah, it's all right.
Oh. Oh gosh. Yeah. All right, I'll stop it there. That's the next one. Oops.
Yeah, let's just see.
Oh, Sharon was waiting in the waiting room.
That's
Sorry,
like,
Sharon.
did you
Yeah,
get her?
she's coming in now. We just, yeah, we just missed her there. Deirdre, when you clipped up the 197 there at the end, does that still kind of greet you? You know, that's the worst thing about high jump. It's always the one you don't clear.
Yeah, it's funny, it would, and I think that's the thing about high jumping, isn't it? You always end on the it could have been that little bit better, but I think I suppose, you know, because when I look at it, I think, you know, the 97 was within grasp and there was good height over it, so it gives you hope that, you know, you'll keep going. So I suppose, yeah, you're disappointed on the day that you didn't make it, but probably, you know, gives you the motivation for the next year and the year after to kind of believe that you can jump 2 meters or 197 and higher. Now, it wasn't meant to be, but at the time, you know, you watch the video and you think, well, you know, I can get there and it's believable and, you know, it's feasible. So yeah, I suppose it's interesting to watch now because, like, that was my best day, but at the time you don't think it's going to be. You think there's going to be another 4 years, but your injury gets in the way of these things.
Yeah.
But no, looking back, it's good to see.
And by the way, I know we'll go back to the other. What was your injury? You had a few injuries there in the Olympics as well in the next 4 years. You were saying.
Yeah, I was quite injury prone, and I suppose that's the one thing I would have said about my whole career would have been I was very injury prone throughout it, and I think that's the key thing when you're a young athlete and coming through and listening to your body and making sure you're not maybe overtraining and you're making sure that you're taking the breaks when you need them and doing the rehab and the core and all the things to keep yourself fit and healthy, because I think when I look through all the athletes I would have come up the ranks with and trained through and probably been on a par with that would have excelled beyond where I did, you know, a lot of it is about consistency and being, you know, training consistently at that high level and not having those huge gaps of a year in, a year out, a year in, a year out of sickness. And they're the things that kind of set you back in your, not only in your kind of physical development, but in your flow and in your rhythm in an event like high jump, where rhythm and flow and, you know, technique is so important. So I think keeping healthy is the key thing for a high jumper. Now, injuries always come about, but, you know, that's I think one of the key things I think young athletes need to keep in mind. And, you know, while some of the training, you know, you want to be doing all the big plyometrics and weightlifting and whatnot, I think a lot of the prehab, rehab and a lot of the base training and technical work to prevent injury is important. That's not to say I didn't do it, but you know, I think when you're coming through the ranks as a young athlete, focusing on those areas and getting the basics right is really, really important. So yeah,
and
for
where
me,
was your weak point injury wise?
So Olympic year was my back. I had a bulging disc in my back, so I had quite a lot of. Now it's funny. I sleep pretty well these days, but I probably had like many a sleepless night with just sciatica and pain in my left leg coming from the SI joint. So it was probably an ongoing kind of chronic injury, and then I think a number of weeks before the Olympics really kicked off, where I was kind of bedridden for a couple of weeks, but made my way back with a lot of rehab. But I wouldn't have high jumped for about 4 weeks before even setting foot on the track in the Olympic stadium, so that was a bit stressful. But yeah, it was really back, and Achilles tendon was one of the chronic ones I had. But yeah, the Achilles kind of came and went, but yeah, the back was probably what did in the end. So yeah, I think yeah, but I had a good run, but yeah, a lot of injuries there in the end.
I know you did, and you were telling me earlier, like you cleared Lucy, who's actually right next to you on my screen. It's lovely to see there. That Lucy was your coach, your main coach, and Sean Cahill as well, and that you got to 192 training with Lucy. Yeah. But and as we were saying, then when you moved to Germany, do you want to talk us through firstly what your support structures were like in Dublin at the time before you left, and then?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, Lucy, fantastic coach who's there. If you give a wave, Lucy. So Lucy and I came up through the ranks together, and Lucy would have coached me since I was about, God knows what year, about 13 years of age. So yeah, we coached, trained in DSD together, and she was my first high jump coach. And we trained for many years, and I suppose started doing a lot of what I'd say. But Lucy was incredibly dedicated and a coach, as I was saying earlier, before her time. We were doing circuit training before anyone was doing circuit training, and doing you know, mental preparation for high jump as a sports psychologist before I think anyone was. So yeah, we trained in UCD a lot, in Belfield and out in Santry, until I think I got to the point. Yes, Sean Cahill was helping us a bit to give technical expertise, and Lucy, she'd say it herself, was always very open to. We were always kind of trying to get expertise from international high jump coaches as well. So we would have, you know, tapped into the likes of, I think Dennis Doyle was mentioned, Olivier, earlier. You were saying we would have tapped into the likes of a lot of the international coaches to learn and develop what we were doing. And you know, when I started, it was probably when I started in college that we really started weight training together as well, and really learned about weight training together, reading weight training books, really. And now Lucy's a weightlifting champion. So yeah, we kind of learned ourselves through the ranks and tapping into international expertise. And yeah, I suppose I got to the point where I made the final of the final of Gothenburg European Championships in 2006, having been injured the year before. And I think I was working in a bank at the time, and thought, like, you know, Jesus, like, you know, I was injured last year, and you know, there's a huge amount left that I can do, and I should really make a go of this. So I was kind of looking for a setup that was, you know, where I had, you know, now we have Abbottstown, you know, where I had an indoor training facility, a group of high jumpers that were at, you know, the level I was training at, or a group of high performance athletes kind of focused on it. And yeah, initially I went and trained with Tia Halabout, Olympic champion in 2008 in Belgium, and spent a lot of time working with her. And I think that training didn't really suit me. It was heptathlete training, a lot of like long distance training, and just didn't suit me. You know, I think that's the key thing, you know, for a lot of athletes. Some things work for some athletes and other stuff for others. So that one didn't really work out for me. And then I moved to, I was doing a competition trying to train for, I think it was a SACA World Championships I was trying to qualify for, and I went to a competition in Leverkusen, Bayer Leverkusen, and I met a high jump coach out there. And when I saw the setup out there, they had full indoor track, 2 gyms both sides, every single type of equipment you could imagine for high jumpers, pole vaulters, field event specialists and whatnot. So yeah, I quit my job in Dublin and moved out there. About 4 weeks later they took me on. So then I trained in Germany for another 4 years, and yeah, gained made my way up the ranks and jumped 195, but I think I was more consistent at a higher level. So I was kind of competing at that Diamond League level more consistently, and international level more consistently. So over 90 on a consistent level and 95, and I had a couple of injuries while I was out there, but you know, it was a great experience training out there. As you said, like I know the girls that are going to be speaking later, and Wendy and Ursula, and all trained together and had that kind of competition. So I had a group of high jumpers to train with, and yeah, had the facilities there, and was able to have my coach out there was, you know, Gert Ozenberg, who coached Heike Henkel, Eureka Meifart, and they were kind of, as you say, they're you know, full-time coaches in the Leverkusen facility. So we were training twice a day in that facility with them. So it was a great opportunity that I really enjoyed. So yeah, it was a great experience altogether.
I mean, and Deirdre, did your training, I know the facilities and the group are a big thing, but did your actual training change much then as well? Like your training plan or even technique, but those sides, like, was there a magic bullet then as well, or what do you think? You know,
there was kind of probably a different focus on different areas, and I think a lot of the time when you have a facility like that and you have the time and the effort, you know, it was just a different kind of level of dedication to what you're doing. So, you know, when you have an indoor arena that you're training in like that, we were able to kind of dedicate the time to the drills and the technical side of things. So Germany and the German setup will be very focused on technique and getting everything right. So a lot of the time it's like going back to the basics of every single movement you're doing. And, you know, my coach often was like, you know, and I suppose technically I wasn't, I wouldn't have thought, I would have had, I suppose, technical habits that like I was trying to correct, you know, and it takes a lot of time and dedication to just kind of fix those small elements. So we would have spent a lot of time on, I think, the coordination and technical side of things, and drills, which I see a lot of athletes, you know, doing nowadays that maybe we weren't as focused on back when I started. And functional strengths, you know, there'd be a lot, like they were, and I see it like much more now in the strength training we do in Ireland now, but at the time probably, you know, it was much more high jump specific and functional strength weight training, you know, so like that would have kind of been a key focus. And so the training was a little bit different, and it was more intense, of course, you know, but you were built up to it, like a lot more plyometrics and things like that. So we would have been doing really heavy plyometric sessions, and the likes, and they had a physio unit beside the track as well, which was, you know, really incredible. So yeah, I think a different focus sometimes. I suppose to summarize, more coordination, more technical work that they would have focused on, and which, you know, sometimes in Ireland it's lashing raining outside and you have to do 8 200s or whatever else afterwards. So, you know, you're less likely to spend an hour doing the coordination drills beforehand when it's lashing raining, I think sometimes.
Yeah, true. It's true. And what was I going to say there? Oh yeah, we were talking earlier. Do you think that there's a magic bullet? Everyone's talking around, like you were saying, you know, the way some countries they just churn out, like in the Ukraine now at the moment, they're churning out a lot of great jumpers. Is it their systems? Is it, you know, secret information that they have that none of the rest of us have, or what is it? What's the magic bullet, do you think?
I think when I see a lot of the centres, and, you know, even Sweden did really well back. There was kind of like that period where they had a huge number of high jumpers that were coming out. So there is like that kind of domestic competition and culture, like as I say, the kind of rising tide. But equally, you know, I think, and it probably, you know, having, you know, seen what you talk about later, like with the girls, like have maybe a professional coaching setup where, like, a lot of the time the coach is completely dedicated. That's their job and their role to be, you know, like where I was in Leverkusen. Now, while I wasn't I was by far not the best athlete in the facility, they would have had, you know, pole vaulters there that would have been the number 2, 4 and 5 in the world, or, you know, the year after the 1, 2 and 6 in the world. But, you know, they would have had 3 pole vault coaches that like that's their job to be a professional coach and to ensure that the training programs are developed and they're that they're at the track there twice a day to facilitate and have that kind of space and time. Now, not every country can do that, but I do think a huge investment in coaching is the thread that does go through a lot of the kind of the where you see those units that excel and that kind of sense of team. We see it a lot in boxing in Ireland, where you have that unit, that facility, that dedicated coach, that like high performance unit sense. It's kind of a proven, or in the rugby setup we see it, and then we see it in Abbottstown as well. We have the centre, we have the physio, we have the unit there, and while you will always get the one athlete who's got their own setup in a different area or whatever else, that is a huge aspect to it as well. So in terms of the setup, that's the key piece. In terms of the silver bullet for the best high jumper in the world, there's so many different ways to get there and to skin a cat, and I think staying injury free, and that kind of consistent level, and focus on your technical ability, and not kind of getting run away with different fads of training, and just being consistent and believing in your approach is key.
Mm-hmm. And if you had Dave Sweeney's job, sorry Dave, I'm selling your job to what would, like, is there something that we're firstly with our own standard, how can we shift it up so it reaches elite senior level on the world stage?
Yeah, I suppose I don't want to answer,
and I don't want to be
not as much in the loop as much as what's happening at the moment, and I think things are obviously working with the likes of some of the great high jumpers coming through, so it's obviously working what the approach is. But I think having a facility like Abbottstown, if you had another 2 or 3 around the country, and I think DSD and Lucy will probably fill me in on what's happening in terms of the facility there in Thomastown. You don't need a full 400-meter track for a high jump, for a high jump area. I've seen plenty of places in Czech Republic where it's just a high jump area in a barn with a unit where you can do a good bit of training and focus where that's indoor. So I think, I think kind of developing those regional pockets of coordinated, focus on high jump and coaches to mentor. Obviously you don't want to have a setup like, you have the likes of Lucy, and you have the likes of Niall and great coaches that are out there, but maybe it's a case of just providing the mentorship to those coaches, as is probably being done at the moment, and bringing people together. I know we're here on Zoom, but there's been quite a few conferences over the last while. So I think bringing those people together to jump to compete, and putting formalized structures in place, and I think getting the international expertise, as I believe you're doing with Fuzz and things like that, I think they're all great developments. But I think consistency, having a good 5-year plan, and consistency, and bedding it down exactly what that person is accountable for that's coming over, from international areas, and sticking with it, and having that consistency there for the athletes so that they know what to plan for is key.
Yeah, you'd said that earlier. So myself and Deirdre chatted a bit earlier on the phone, and that was one thing you'd said on the phone, was the accountability that was there in Germany, because they were paid full-time coaches, and there was that structure. But can I ask you a question then? Was it hard for you to leave Lucy, lovely Lucy, and move to Germany? You had such a strong relationship for so long.
Yeah, and I think Lucy and I had probably such a strong relationship for so many, like since I was a kid. So she was kind of like my big sister, best friend, and coach, all wrapped into one, and sports psychologist probably as well. But I think we'd been together for so long. We were such good friends, and she's such an open-minded person that I knew it wouldn't be. That it probably wouldn't be a difficult thing for us to manage and cope. And she was always a great mentor for me when I was away, and friend, when I was abroad. But I think she probably realized, I think there was kind of that kind of mutual understanding that, I needed more now. I needed to kind of be training, that you know, twice a day, and I need, you know, Lucy's like got a full-time job as well, and like was doing bonkers stuff to facilitate my high jumping. So, you know, and you know, I probably feel bad about going, can you come here? Can you come here this weekend? Can you come here that weekend? And like, so I think, you know, there's probably that, and I think I needed something new, you know, and I think that's where, you know, for a lot of high jump coaches, it can be difficult to let go. But Lucy was always really open-minded, you know. I don't know, Lucy, if you want to.
Yeah, I was going to say, Lucy,
jump in there. I mean, Deirdre knows full well there were many days of the week I saw more of Deirdre Ryan than I saw of my husband. And, you know, I was very happy to do it, but, you know, I had a full-time job. You know, I fully appreciated when I'd come to the limit. I'm proud of what we did together. You know, Deirdre jumped 192 on several occasions. She was the first person to make a final in a major games and high jump. And I think we did fantastic work together. But, you know, I did not have what it took to take her those extra. She needed an A standard for the Olympics. She had the B standard. She needed the A standard. I did not have anything more left to give Deirdre, either time-wise or skills-wise. I think she struggled for the year with Tia, if that's probably fair to say, Deirdre. But then I think once you got into the German setup, that really suited you well. And it had everything. And I mean, do you remember I came over and stayed with you for a weekend at one stage? And it was just, I was just blown away, you know, all of the stuff they had in those stages, you know. I mean, this is like 15 years ago. And, you know, I mean, we could not have done it in Ireland at the time, no matter what the coaching setup was. You know, we didn't have the facilities. We do now. Absolutely, we do now. I mean, I think Abbottstown and the Institute of Sport and Athlone, you know, all of those facilities are great. But, you know, our coaches, I mean, I had a full-time job, which was a very demanding job. And, you know, I only had so much time. And I think that probably goes for most of the coaches who are, you know, Breed Golden there is a school principal. It's a very full-time job, you know, and does amazing work with jumpers down in Waterford. But there's only so many hours in the day. So, you know, yes, I think Deirdre had to make that move. And the thing I suppose the two of us always say is how proud we are. We've just remained really good friends, you know, and that has been, for me, that's a really important thing in it as well.
Mm. Yeah, I would come in here on that as well. And I think it's a mindset that's really important for coaches, that we have to be aware of our limitations in terms of really high performing athletes. And if we're coaching athletes to, you know, world class level, that we need to have an awareness that, do we have the capacity within our lives to bring this athlete on? And if we haven't, to be brave enough to look for the expertise perhaps that can support that. I mean, it's only a very few athletes will you know, be at that level. But when you're working and you have children and you're involved in lots of other things, and you're trying to fit coaching an athlete 6 days a week and going away on warm weather camps and going away to international competitions with them at the weekend, the ask and the personal and the family sacrifice is huge. And similarly, I would have had an athlete in a similar position to Deirdre at 660 meters in the long jump. And, you know, we just felt like Lucy and Deirdre that, you know, the time had come to perhaps look for that additional expertise that could perhaps take her to the next level. And in our situation, you know, from an athletics perspective, it didn't go as well as Kelly moved to America for a year, and it didn't go as well as we had hoped for you know, lots of reasons. But injury being a major one there. But it's being open-minded enough to kind of maybe just look at the limitations and capacity, and not to be afraid to make the decisions that are best for the athlete, which is I think what Deirdre and Lucy have done there.
And I've spoken to Wendy a bit too, and Wendy's mother realised, you can talk there too, Wendy, if you want, about when your mother realised her limitations and she brought in expertise from abroad.
Yes, my mum had been a PE teacher and was for most of her career, and she just had a love of athletics. She brought in our club, athletics club, brought over Ron Murray, who was the British high jump director of high jumping or whatever at the time. He'd been a straddle jumper himself. You know, the Frisbee flop had just really come out and materialised. But he had learned quite a lot. And, you know, in a way, while straddle is different, there's still a lot of the same things, you know, that benefited each. And we brought him over. Our club paid for him. He stayed in our house several times. And as a result, he got to see all of the girls, you know, in my mum's group. But, you know, I have found things there even recently. And it was all, he had given us all of the East German sort of training, the circuit training, you know, how to, if you did so much in your squats and ran 30 meters and did so much medicine ball, all of those things all date back to what the Eastern Bloc were doing at the time. So that kind of helped. And my mum ended up coaching 150 kids sometimes at track, as well as their high jumpers. And then, you know, she realised she got to a stage where she'd taken us all, Janet and Debbie and Ursula and myself, to a certain level. And then you really did need to go to the next level. And we all sort of moved on one after the other to Norman Brooke, our national coach at the time. And Norman was brilliant at planning, you know, and doing all of the real conditioning and the weights and everything that brought you together in a proper program. And then we all moved up another level again, you know, and I know that Janet moved on after that as well. So I think Ursula stuck with wee Molly and me for most of her career, you know, and when she talks about her sort of journey, it's very interesting. And her and I filled in all the gaps during the week as to what we remembered, and each of us remembered different bits. And there's quite a bit of it that I forgot, because we all still think she was just a schoolgirl high jumper. And in actual fact, she kept jumping until you were 27, 28, you know. So, yeah, it's very interesting. I do think if we had had, you know, the Germans set up or anything that they had, and the indoors, we were jumping outdoors on cinders with car floodlights and metal bars, and got onto bits of sponge and santry tied together in a badminton mat or a badminton net, you know. So we had it a lot tougher, as Deirdre said, and in a way that made you more resilient. But we also had a school gym, and we trained, as Ursula told me, every single week we high jumped in a school gym and wet our feet with our saliva to try and stop us slipping underneath the bar. But, you know, I think once you chat to Ursula, she can briefly bring you through her whole career, which is really quite fascinating. And then Janet and Sharon and their journey through Commonwealths and on to Olympics. What do you think, Olivia?
What do I just wanted to ask Ursula there. But one of the big points I heard you say there is that when you were jumping together, you know, and even Deirdre, when you were jumping, were you jumping on your own in training mostly when you were up at the like 192 with Lucy, or did you obviously didn't have anyone to jump with?
Yeah, I suppose at home in Ireland, I think it does make a difference. You know, when I first moved to Leverkusen, I was training with other high jumpers at the same level. So, you know, the kind of high jump session was kind of a feel of competition. You know, you get that nervous competition vibe in the morning when you're going down to your technical session, you know, because you had that kind of competition and training, which was really, you know, really good to have. And, you know, you see somebody else do something, you know, I think like a bit like you said earlier, like what are the Ukrainians doing? What are the Russians doing? What are the Germans doing? Like there's almost this sense of like the grass is always greener. There's a silver bullet somewhere else. But then, you know, when you see somebody that you train with and you compete with and you know what their training is, do it in front of your eyes, you know, your belief grows. So I think that domestic kind of competition, the people you're seeing training doing well really pushes people on. So yeah, when I was in Ireland, I was training, primarily, probably had a few people in DSD coming along, but it was pretty much our high jump sessions were me and my own. So it made a huge difference for me to go when I was in Germany, to have people to jump with, to train with that were on the same level. Now, while, you know, you'd have years where one of you were doing better than the other, and, you know, that was always a bit of a challenge, you know, competitors that are friends, that are, you know, whatever else, like I'm sure the girls don't know better. But, Yeah, it does make a huge difference to try and find and to try and train with people that are at that same level as you, you know, and to kind of have that high performance group of people in the same mentality that are dedicated and committed like you are, rather than, you know, if people are kind of just doing it, you know, as a hobby and, you know, maybe not committed, it does get into your psyche. So I think being surrounded by people that are of equal mindset makes a huge difference.
And Ursula, do you think when you started jumping, then was Janet and Sharon and Wendy already jumping? Like when you started jumping, were you in there with them? Is that how you jumped so high? Do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think I started competing when I was 12, just at the end of first form in school. I had one sports day, and in our school they sent you through to the district schools if you were a winner. And then I won the district schools, and then I was just lucky that my PE teacher knew Jerry Carson, who then recommended Molly Phillips, Wendy's mum. So I recall jumping with Molly and the younger athletes to start with, but I think Janet and Debbie and Catherine, we were all around at the same time. They were just a few years ahead of me in the schools and everything. And then I started to train with Jerry and the girls in terms of our sprinting and our, you know, our general conditioning, and sticking with Molly just for the high jump sessions and the, you know, the technical work. And I like training with others, but not too many others. I always found, I didn't like a high jump session where there was maybe more than 3 people jumping at one time. Yeah. I always found the hanging about, even, you know, this is hang out with high jumpers, but I never liked hanging about. I just liked to get stuck in and get on, you know. And I often just like jumping by myself, you know, and then kicking the bar, which Wendy will maybe tell you about, and doing sort of prima donna things like that. But yeah, no, I kind of preferred small groups, or I was quite content jumping alone.
Yes, but in a way, we were all together because we're in the same club. So I was the eldest, and then there was Janet and Catherine Scott was maybe a bit younger, and Debbie Mars and Carla McKinney and Ursula. So they ranged over slightly 5 or 6 years all between them. And Janet, I don't think, started until she was maybe 15, she can tell us. And then we had the lovely Sharon McPeake. Hello, Miss McPeake, dearie, how are you? And she was from that terrible club Ballymena. And because we had such a rivalry in the clubs, and then the rivalry in the jumping, it drove us all on. Didn't mean we all trained together all of the time, but knowing that somebody did well, you know, in that clip that you showed, Ursula jump 181 and beat everybody else, and I had been badly injured that year at the end of my career. But then you saw Janet and Sharon and all striving, you know, to get up to where Bridget Corrigan was and where Ursula was. And so it was a very healthy, we were just very lucky. It was a really good environment, you know. But Ursula, do tell us how you ended up jumping 183, wee rat at 14, and got to Commonwealth Games for her 15th birthday.
Oh, God.
I have absolutely no idea. I can't really. I started jumping just at the end of first form in school, and that started at 127 at the start of the year. Molly coached me, and then I got to 140. And then the next year, I improved to 164 when I was 13. Just by training with Molly a few times a week. I think I used to train Victoria College every Thursday throughout winter in the school gym. We jumped and did plyometrics and all the rest of it. But I did a lot of general training. I kind of hurdled quite a lot. I was quite a good hurdler, particularly at schools level, and a good long jumper. And did a little bit of multi-eventing. And then the following year, I came out, I think, in the indoors in Antrim Forum, if anyone remembers, jumping in the Antrim Forum, and I think I jumped 170 maybe in like February, March time. And then every time out I was improving by a centimetre. I remember being down in Tullamore with Darcy Chillingworth, if anyone remembers him, Ulster Schools fame. He took me down to some selection meeting, and I think I jumped 75, which surprised me as much as anyone. And then district Ulster Schools, I think I got up to 77. So the week before the Irish schools, and then the day of the Irish schools, and I'll never forget it was at Belfield, and I was jumping on the horrible bit where it's half cinder, and then you've only got like the last 2 strides are on the tartan, and I don't know what happened. I cleared 78, and then I cleared 80, and then my dad said to put it to 6 feet. Obviously, you know, the magical 6 foot. So, and then I cleared it, and then I got stuck in the mats. I couldn't even get out of the mats because they were like bean bags tied together. And I really don't know what, you know, I just went massive progression over the 2 years, and I was very, you know, you probably looked like what I did in the video at that stage, maybe a little bit shorter.
And Ursula, a lot of people, because you were jumping over your head at that stage. And like for a lot of, especially young jumpers, young girl jumpers, that's the big thing, to jump over your head. You obviously had no fear.
No, I've always been quite, no, I'm not, I don't, I'm quite, what's the word? I wouldn't be afraid of things, you know, I would sort of be a bit mad really in terms of that. I played a lot of other sport as well, you know, hockey, netball, all the rest of it. It was just always very competitive and very not afraid of things, you know, would have given anything a go. And as I say, tried out, did a lot of hurdling, a lot of long jumping. So I don't know if the multi-event thing helped. I don't know really.
But you must have got a lot of attention then, clearing 183 at 14.
Yeah, it was all about mad, because I didn't even know it was a Commonwealth Games year, and I didn't even know I was in the running for the Commonwealth Games. So actually that was one of the most surprising things, was being brought along to a press conference and not told what it was about, and then I found out it was in the Commonwealth Games team for Australia. And that was a bit, yeah, it was hard to take it all in really. I mean, you know, as I started competing for GB that summer, I got picked for various internationals, and then, as I say, went to the Commonwealth Games with the lovely Sharon and Judith. So baptism of fire, you know. I was actually, Debbie Brill's always been a bit of a heroine of mine, and like, you know, I couldn't actually believe I was in the same competition as Debbie Brill.
So did you find that, like, as at 14 years of age, then 15 years of age when you came out again, did you find it unsettling, you know, to deal with fame, you know, at a young age on the athletics track?
I didn't think I was very famous. I didn't think of it like that. I just really enjoyed it.
You're
right. She's a prima donna.
Hey,
you love the attention.
She's a prima donna. I've just realised I've unmuted myself. Hello, Janet.
Hey, Sharon.
I apologise for being late, everybody.
You're all right. I did leave you in, Sharon. Sorry about that.
I know.
You missed the video of yourself. I know, and they showed a video of you as well. You were lovely. You actually knocked the bar. Yeah, but you knocked the bar. The only one I found who knocked the bar.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, sorry. And I had loads of videos of Janet knocking the bar too, and I said, please send me one where you cleared the bar. You got videos. Bless. I know. And but Ursula, then, like, so you stayed with it till you were 27. But what did
No, I had a big long break. It's probably the biggest regret in my life, really. It's sort of try to be concise. I competed then throughout schools, and I jumped the first year. I jumped 83. I jumped 81 twice and 80. Funny enough, I jumped the 80 at the Schools International with Gary Halpin, God rest him. So, and met Gary at those the Schools International in Colwyn Bay in Wales. So I had 4 jumps over 80 that first year. The year I went to Brisbane to the Commonwealth Games, and then the next year I jumped over 80 every time out, and just I was going for the qualifying for the European juniors, and it was 184, and I jumped 183, 183, 182, 181, 182, 183, and I couldn't get the magical 184. And then Wendy goes to her brother's wedding one Saturday. It was the selection meeting was that night, and I cleared 78 at the Celtic International. And then I thought, oh, stuff it, like I'll just stick the bar at 184, because that, you know, what's the point? Jump, you know, 181 will take me nowhere. And I cleared 84, so then I got picked for the European juniors. And then the next year, and similar year, just jumping over 80 all the time, 84 a few times. So there was always felt there was a big jump in me that never quite, you know, I had a few Deirdre's 197, I had a few 187s like that, which you can Photoshop if you like. And then I got stuck in and tried to train for heptathlon more and more, because I was a 14.5 second hurdler, 590 long jumper, and a good sprinter, and so on. So Wendy and I think focused on heptathlon then when I was about 16.
Yeah.
And through from the winter training when I was 16 through 17, I think I did a 4,800 heptathlon.
Yes,
when I was under 17. Yeah. So I think Alan Lindop, the GB multi events guy, was mad about me, you know, focusing my attention on multi-events. So really did a really hard winter then, doing proper horrible training with frogs all over the Mary Peters track for 800 meters and like doing like 500 meters. I mean, why would you do that? And throwing and doing all of that. And then I got a lovely stress fracture. And then stress fracture put me out obviously 6 weeks in pot, and then I came out. A couple of weeks later, managed to do 184 again, but again just kept getting stuck at 184, and then eventually second year at university, lower back injury, a bit like Deirdre. I've had lower back and Achilles problems all my career and the stress fracture, and then then I sort of couldn't get any decent physio. Went to the only sports medicine specialist in Northern Ireland in 1986-87 time, Liz Dewey, if anyone remembers her. And she raised my legs in the air a few times and told me she couldn't find out what was wrong with me, but I couldn't sit for any length of time without being in agony with my lower back. So, and I've had lower back problems since then, really all my life. So then that was me. So dropped out, went to live in England, and then returned to Northern Ireland after my parents had died in about 95, was it? Started working in leisure services, and then met Norman Brooke, the coach Wendy referred to, at Hilary O'Neill's funeral, if anyone remembers Hilary.
Yeah.
And I was in my late 20s then, and I said, Norman, I still think I could maybe give it a go again. And he said, well, look, yeah, I'll coach you. So started in the October of, was it 96, maybe 96? And I jumped in the GB championships in the January and got 80 first time, and I was on fire that day. And I thought I'm going to clear 85, but I'd had problems over the months of really, really stiff Achilles tendons in the morning, and just real tightness. And that competition, I was spraying the life out of both ankles with the freeze spray because they were really, really sore. And my first attempt at 85, my calf just ruptured. So I don't know what might have happened, so then I hobbled back and I kind of thought, spray some more ice spray and give your second attempt a go, you'll be all right, you've got a few minutes. I couldn't even walk, but I still thought I'll give 85 a go. But anyway, there wasn't enough free spray in the world for that. So when I took my mark for my second attempt, and Alan Lindop looked at me and he kind of just thought, you're mad. And Brad McStravick, I think, was going to leap over the barrier from the outer of the track and come and stop me, but I couldn't even walk. So then I limped on literally for another couple of years, training without being able to train properly because I couldn't sprint a lot without the Achilles flaring up again. And kept a few more 180s cleared, but Norman at one point I was popping over 180 and training on a regular basis, which I'd never done first time round. And I think Norman was saying he was predicting 190 for me that season, and then the lovely Achilles stroke calf went again. And that was after meeting Paul McKee. So I'm not saying there's any connection. I'm not saying he put the scud on me or anything. But that was when we were out warm weather training for the Kuala Lumpur Commonwealth Games. That was what I was aiming for, and possibly Sydney. I've always dreamed of going to the Olympics, but just injuries got the better, like most of us, they do, don't they? So then I eventually had surgery on my Achilles, but I never made it back after the surgery. Just work got in the way. I had quite a sort of responsible job and trying to hold down work and all of that kind of stuff. When you're in your late 20s, it just I don't know, just a career petered out.
And then Janet, you joined later. Ursula started off 12 years of age, and then Janet, you were a late bloomer, as they say. And how were you for? But did that help injury-wise? I'm wondering. Then, did you suffer with many injuries then?
Well, yeah. I mean, I'd like to do a study. I bet we all have bad backs. I know Debbie does. I do. My brother does. Now Ursula and Deirdre both do. Sharon, how's your back?
Dodgy. Very dodgy.
Yeah. And I bet we do. Anyway, yeah, no, all this stuff Ursula and Wendy are talking about, going with Molly in the gym every week, I was no part of any of that. I didn't have any of that to do at all. I was a swimmer and a dancer and a crap hockey player. I couldn't catch a throw to save my life, so I just didn't really do nothing. I was just jack of all trades. my PE teacher, you know, in the school districts, they used to have 3 in each event. So she just says, well, you're tall, you're going to do high jump, long jump and sprints, because we needed a 3rd person in the school. So that's what I did. I went and I did high jump, long jump and sprints, and I beat the other 2. So then she started telling me the next year, well, you're going to do it again, but you should probably go join a club. And I'm like, no, it's okay. And it took her about 3 years of saying the same thing every year to make me go and join a club. I was afraid. All I saw was this Tanya Henderson person who was jumping in Molly's club. You know, she was so good, and I was like completely intimidated. I was doing scissors. I would just run up and jump scissors over the bar. And it was my great ambition to be second in the school to her. I know, that was my great ambition. So finally, I did go along to Molly's club, and it was a Thursday night at Mary Peters Track, and she would have just this bunch of girls, and I was completely intimidated by all of them. Wendy was there. There's a girl called Tyron Hart from Methody. I don't remember Ursula being there. Leah Baird.
That's right,
Leah Baird and Debbie and Caroline and Paul McKinney, and you know, all these people that were so good, and they could all jump, and here's me tiddling along and doing scissors. But Molly Phillips was just amazing. Molly Phillips made you feel like you were the greatest thing since sliced bread. And she just made me love it. So I kept going back. I would cycle up there every Thursday on my bicycle all the way from home, and you know, everyone else is getting dropped off or driving up in their cars, and here's me on my little bicycle. So I would come up, and I did that for the school season for maybe a couple of years, and of course in between I twisted my ankle. And do you remember going one summer? We were camping somewhere, our family were camping somewhere on a holiday, and I wanted to, Molly had, this was the year she gave me this yellow vest of Wendy's, because I didn't have anything to compete in. And she gave me this yellow vest of Wendy's, and she said, you know, you need to come along to the Northern Ireland Championships. I'm like, well, we're camping on holiday. So I made my mom drive me to this place, Coal Island. It was in the middle of nowhere, the Northern Ireland Championships on Coal Island. You know, do you remember that, Sharon?
No, I don't.
It was
cold
and rainy, and I knew it was the most horrible experience anyway. And my mother said, you're not doing that anymore. So that was the end of that. And then what happened when I was in probably like lower and upper 6th, Molly finally got me to stop doing scissors and changed me to doing the flop. And I was learning that, and that made a big difference. So when Ursula was, the years you were talking about, when you were in the Irish schools and the schools internationals and doing your 180s, your 183s, I was learning to do Fosbury flop, and I was going once a week to Molly on Thursdays and with my bicycle, and I was jumping like 170, and maybe I was getting 175. That was it. That's all I did. I didn't do anything else. I never went to schools internationals or junior internationals. I never competed on a junior team. I never went to anything of that nature at all. Whenever Norman came along and Wendy started training with Norman, that was the year I had just finished high school and was going to college. Me and Debbie were in the same year, and Caroline McKinney was probably a year or 2 ahead of us. And Catherine Scott would have been a year or so behind. She was still in school. Ursula would have been still in school. We went as really Debbie. We went along as training partners for Wendy. Wendy would come and pick us up at lunchtime out of our, you know, chemistry lab, and we would take off our whatever we had over our track clothes and change in the back of her Mini, and we'd all drive up to the track and we'd do whatever session Norman had given for Wendy to do, and then she would drop us back in the lab, and and that's what we did day after day. And then we went in the weights room and we started doing things called weight training. Well, that was all news to me as well. None of this was familiar at all to me, but after probably maybe a few months of that, Wendy, Norman took Debbie aside and said, it's time you had your own schedule. And he took me aside, said the same thing. But we formed a kind of core group.
Yeah.
Where you, me, and Debbie were probably the core of it. But along would come, I think Caroline was still around. Yeah. Paul McKinney was still around. My brother joined, Davy Mars. There was a few other rugby players, some of those throwers, Mike.
Mark Forsyth, the long jumper.
Mark came he was a little later, but this core group of athletes who were like the die-hard athletes. Now we started training, and like you said, Norman really had a great ability to teach and coach conditioning, really solid cover all conditioning. We worked really hard 6 days a week, and Molly was the one that taught us all to jump, and we all jumped together. So because we were truly a little training team, and together truly we all did get better. And that went on for a few years. Unfortunately, Wendy's accident really put her out. But you were coaching Ursula after that, and then Michelle Knowles would join. There were people on the peripheral of this core group, but the core group remained. And the core group remained, like you said, Mark Forsyth joined in, and Jackie would even come and join in some of those sessions. Elaine McLaughlin be there sometimes. Mark Kirk and his group would be at the track.
Traders.
Yeah, there was this absolute die-hard group of athletes that were totally committed, and we basically lived and slept and breathed it, and we all got better. We weren't all high jumpers, but there was definitely a group of high jumpers that got better. We didn't ever, no, that's not true, we didn't never train with you, Sharon, but it was mostly when we would go up to Antrim Forum to those kind of Northern Ireland group sessions. That was really the only time I would have trained with you.
Yeah.
But then I competed with you, and we travelled on different GB teams on one thing and another. And the Commonwealth Games was really when we got together. I think that first one in '86.
Yeah.
When we both, the reason you only have photographs or videos of us knocking it down is because none of those TV people gave us a shot. They were all expecting us to be long gone, and so they only had videos of us knocking it down. And then when we were finally trying to get, we ended up with a silver and bronze out of that nobody knew we were going for at all.
Well, I didn't.
Oh, you didn't. I was going for the bronze. I don't know what you were going for.
I was so ill. I had the same bugs that Seb Coe had. So that whole competition was just a blur. And I can remember Shauna Kyle saying to me afterwards, she said, "Thank Christ you got a medal," she said, "because you looked shit." She said, "You could have made a bit of effort with your makeup." I was in a daze. It just passed in a blur because at one point I was going to go home. Well, and then the Northern Ireland team moved me into a room on my own. And it's a bit like the pandemic. No, I was isolated. I was like, I watched Tim's race from the bloody House of Residence. I wasn't allowed to go to the track to watch him run. Maybe that's where the coronavirus started. It was me.
Yeah, you started it.
I left out of the clip ahead of you, Sharon. At the end of it, when you came off the mats, you started giving out to the photographers.
You told me
I should have left that in. Yeah, you said, you're nothing but a dirty old man. Stop, go away with your camera.
Well, you see, in my moment, that was me and the cameraman, okay? And he was a cameraman. There was no sound, and we were in a stadium. It wasn't until afterwards I realised it was the bloody, the Commonwealth feed. So it was going out loud and clear to everybody. And I'm like, oh my God. Well, because he kept zooming in on my bar. Every time I was taking my tracksuit off. So, I enjoyed it. It was every competition, but, a bit different from Auckland. Lauren Arsh should not have been in Auckland, should she? I'd had a good time. I have been known to party.
Would you think there, just listen to your story and Deirdre's story, and is the team part of training then? Because Janet, did you stay with Norman and Wendy to get to your 190, 192, or did you go with other expertise?
No, we had a training group basically for the guts of 8 to 10 years together, and Molly was really our only technical coach. I don't think that's fair to say, Wendy, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
We did have an ability. We had no ability to do anything indoors, and Norman did provide us with an ability to jump indoors up at the PEC, but that was the only time. The rest of the time we were throwing those mats over the hill and scraping a line of snow so we could jump outside or run in a track. So facility wise we didn't, but what we did have was each other, and we were all committed. If I didn't show up, I was letting somebody down. We all showed up. And we worked really hard, and we pushed each other in training, not necessarily technical training, but in weight training and track, everything. And we all got better together. And yes, without that, the coach wasn't necessarily there all the time.
No, Norman was only there maybe
once
2 times a week. But
Maybe.
because I was training for heptathlon, I was training twice a day. And we did this horrible thing called stage training, which took 2 hours. And we did it 3 times a week. And we did our weights 3 times a week. And the weights were very, very competitive. And Debbie and I certainly were very competitive. And so was Ursula. Janet, on the other hand, bench press to save herself. You know,
my brother would hang 2 damp socks on the weights at the end of the bar, and he says, "There, I'll make them damp socks next time, and that'll be heavier for you."
But she needed to build up her arms in order to be able to do. She was very good at cleans, now I have to say. But
we all did pull-ups, and I did dangles.
Yeah. But, you know, we did 2 hour weight sessions and 2 hours worth of stage training. But Janet would have been very good running. I don't know if Deirdre did a lot of running. Janet would join in my 10-200s with a 90-second jog back and had to be under 30 seconds. And she walked the whole way round, and I couldn't breathe, you know. And Norman took me aside after the 8th one and said, "You're not trying, Janet's beating you in all of these." And I went, "I know she's 6 foot and I'm 5'3", something to do with it. She's 9 inches taller than me. But she had a natural endurance and ability to run, you know, which was superb. She could have been a 400-meter runner. And the same way Ursula was a brilliant athlete, you know, 4,800 at 16 was a really good point score. But Janet was very good at that. So we did do a lot of running and general conditioning, but the whole programming was good. And we were very highly conditioned and strong, you know, and all of the girls in that video were all the same as the girls today. Well, some of the girls are a bit leaner, but, you know, they were all the right part of weight ratio, all of the girls. And look, Sharon looked fabulous. It didn't show the one of you, Sharon, at the Northern Ireland Championships. It was at the Commonwealths, I think, you know, and all of the girls were very, very fit and slim and strong, and they're all excellent technique. And as Ursula said, we high jump every week right through the winter, and wherever we could, school gyms or the PEC. And Deirdre alluded to that too. You know, you went back and you worked on one wee bit of your technique. And lots of people these days don't have time to do that, or they don't do it, even though, you know, you've got to be so well drilled. And because things go wrong, you know, we've seen Morgan Lake there, and she has gone from being 195 and then she dropped away down. Even Summer Leckie, you know, opened there with 75, but that's because she hasn't been able to jump, you know, all winter. So you pick up a bad habit, even though you don't know you've picked it up. And then you have to work on that to try and fix it again, or you turn your back to the bar and you don't drive your knee, sort of thing. So, you know, it's important to continue jumping as well as doing all of the other stuff, I think, you know.
I think that's really important, Wendy. Yeah, I think that's a really important point. And I think, you know, we've heard a lot, like, from everyone here now, and the various different things that we're talking about. But I think, you know, if we were kind of trying to pull together what are the key things that worked for everybody and that didn't work or whatever else, I think, Wendy, that's a really good point on jumping. And I think in Germany, when I was there, I had the opportunity, because the facility that was there, I was jumping a lot more, and that's functional conditioning. So no matter how much you're out, you're in the gym or whatever else, I think, you know, for me, certainly, and it sounds like from all of you, be it whether it's in the, you know, whether it's in your hall, the halls or the actual facilities that you have, I think, you know, the trying to get out there and trying to do your technical work and transfer your functional strength is really, really important. And, you know, I think it sounds like, I don't know, it'd be great if we could kind of try and pull together some of the great learnings that everyone had. And I think, Wendy, you know, for me, it certainly was, you know, functional strength, you know, having the opportunity to do a lot of that coordination and technical work, and, you know, jumping, you know, and, you know, having the conditioning behind it, because, you know, we all know, and we've all kind of alluded to the fact that we've all had the back injuries, we've all had the Achilles tendon injuries. And I certainly know that the years that I got them, there were the years that I started jumping too early without having the conditioning. Like, it's the highest intensity plyometric that you'll do is, you know, trying to leap over a bar on a curve at a high speed. So you need to do the build up to the plyometric. So, you know, I think, you know, certainly for me, the best years I had, I was really highly conditioned. I had a lot of core work done. I had a lot of conditioning done. I certainly wasn't very fit at the 800s and the 400s, as a lot of you girls sounded like you were, but I was probably better than I was in my bad years, you know, but it sounds like there's a lot of threads there for that kind of go across all of the girls that are on tonight.
Janet, could I just ask you, you know, you got to your 92, you went to the Commonwealth Games in 86, yeah. And then what Olympics did you get to, and then the following Commonwealth Games? So you went
88 Olympics and the 90 Commonwealth Games.
What did you jump?
It was the 92 that I ruptured my Achilles. I'm sorry, what? What did you say?
What did you do then at the Olympics in 88? How did you get on?
So the qualifying height in the Olympics to make the final was 192. So I cleared 192 first time to make the final, and then I cleared 190 in the final. I didn't get the 93.
Was that the next day?
Yeah.
I think, you know, that there's something to be said, you know, and all of the people that organise these competitions, having the qualifying one day and everybody puts all their effort into getting into the final, and then the next day, you know, that's a big ask, particularly for high jump, because, you know, long jump, you're running off the board, pole vault, you're running and taking off, you know, with the pole. The high jump, you're running off a curve and you're having to convert all of that horizontal to vertical. It's a terrible strain. And all the girls here have said about Achilles injuries and stuff, you know, I don't know about Sharon. I mean, I think I was lucky that never happened to me because I wrecked them.
You've done everything else?
Oh, Sharon's Achilles were bad too.
Oh, were they?
Oh, no, I fine when I was jumping, but then, like a numpty, I coached at my daughter's school on a netball court, 12 years ago now, ruptured my Achilles, and the good old Royal Sussex Hospital got an infection in it, so I lost a quarter of it, and I ended up, looked like I've been bitten by a shark, and I've had a skin graft on it. There's still a hole in there, so. But mine was fine when I was jumping. I got shin splints at Cosford every year. That was my one big problem, was the shin splints. But no, Achilles was fine when I was competing. It was crazy.
The two of you though went on to the next Commonwealth Games as well, didn't you? Janet, were you involved in a jump off? Was that the one you were involved in?
Yeah, that was the jump off. Well, that was horrible. 3.5 hours in that heat. And you know what? I can watch that every time and I still lose.
No, I know. Bloody pathetic, isn't it?
I know.
Whereas I had gone off to have a cigarette.
Oh yeah, typical.
With not who were you in the jump off with? Tanya Murray. Tanya Murray. God, where did that come from? And I remember going off with somebody else. I can't remember who it was. And came back and he was still at it. Those are the days we were at it for
3.5 hours. It was awful. Yeah. I couldn't breathe.
But at least you got a silver.
Yeah, that's not the one I wanted.
I know. Well, I know. You're just being greedy. You'd already got a bronze, you know.
I think someone there is asking about Achilles tendon injuries and how you avoid them in the chat. Have any of you girls good tips? I know for me, certainly it was, you know, standing on, you know, the eccentric movement on the step to kind of strengthen your Achilles.
We all did that. We did that. So our cows come home. I don't know if there's a right way or a wrong way. I make my kids do yoga and I stretch them right from their low backs all the way down.
You didn't have that then, though, did they?
Oh, we didn't have diddly squat. We were like the bull in the china shop.
Exactly. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't.
And if it ruptures, it ruptures.
Oh God, I know. It's horrible.
Yeah.
You're still keeping fit though, aren't you?
Yeah, my Achilles ruptured like I was about to start a jump in a competition, and the 400 meters were lined up, and I was kind of waiting to see whether the gun would go off or whether I would take my warm-up jump. So I decided to take my warm-up jump. As they went mark set, and my Achilles went bang, and the 400 meters ran, and I fell on the floor.
Where was this then?
This was in Canada in 92.
Oh my God.
I had to be carried off the track, flown back in plaster to London, and they had 2 surgeries that re-ruptured again after 3 months. It was a mess. So that was my terminal event as well. So yeah, I'm very keen that they avoid it. I don't know how to avoid it, but I certainly think really good technique and really good foundation of strength and stretching has got to be part of it.
Stretching.
Yeah. I think a lot of when we were in Germany, a lot of the work they used to do was in the sandpit. You know, if I don't know if any of the coaches or you know, a lot of the work just walking in the sand and doing kind of drills in the sandpit. And a lot of exercises for your feet, you know, even just kind of like, you know, using a towel and kind of pulling in the towel and working on your working on your feet and your kind of ankle movements and a lot of the drills, even just doing the alphabet with your ankle was one of the ones we used to do, like almost torturous when you're trying to move your ankle around, trying to kind of map out the alphabet. They used to do a lot of this kind of terraband work, I think, in Germany as well, which was really good for your feet as well as your kind of ankle and things like that. It's always really useful for high jumpers.
And girls, what would you say to you were saying there that the functional jumping, the actual jumping, what would you say to now with lockdown and all we have a lot of young jumpers on here now. I see there's a lovely girl there, Claudia. If you want to say anything, you can wave. She's down the bottom of my screen there. She jumped 160 at 13 years of age just last summer. So, and she adores jumping, loves flying through the air, and she's really missing jumping. Like, I know we're in strange times.
Yeah, there's loads of drills you can do though without actually having the bar, you know, like you know, you can do a lot of run-ups and takeoffs, even if you have like kind of picturing running up to a basketball net and doing the takeoff jumps and things like that, like, you know. I know we were talking earlier about Dennis Doyle used to do a lot of kind of taking off into standing positions, and just even, you know, a lot of high jumpers, I think their tendency is to dive into the bar when you're landing on a mat. So, you know that kind of natural dive in that you're always trying to avoid. So it probably would be a good opportunity, I think, during lockdown to focus on a couple of key areas that you can do without the mat. You know, use the opportunity to say, well, you know, that's an area, the kind of jump up and take off drill, you know, that one where you run up, you jump up and you kind of take off and hold your arms, you know, that kind of those kind of drills that you don't really need it, you know, you can do it out in, actually, do you know who's a great person to follow on Facebook is Ciara Kearns. She's doing drills out in the car parks, and so is Lucy Moore. But, you know, there's plenty of things you can do without actually having the mat. And I think focusing on areas where, you know, like staying away from the bar and staying into your curve and curve runs, you know, you can do those anywhere, you know, and maybe it's an opportunity to reset your technique. And then when you go back to the pit, the actual high jumping, you might have solved one particular problem, like instead of trying to just kind of say, oh, well, I can't do this and I can't do that, which is naturally pretty difficult. But, you know, focusing on a key area, I think, is always a good way of doing it, you know.
It's 100% Deirdre. Yeah, that's what Claude is doing at the moment. Just the dry phase, because especially young girls, they love, because we love it. You love to just dive in over the bar and.
Yeah, do you know another one is napping? You know, that even like you don't need the cones, but you know, running around in a circle, like even just that kind of like in a field or wherever else you are, like I think that kind of curve running is such an important thing for high jumpers, you know, to be able to kind of get used to, you know, working the curve when you're running. So I think even focusing on areas like that, everyone can do. You'll find a field, you'll find a, you know, or even if you have a beach or something like that nearby, like, you know, working on the sand is a really good way to, you know, if anyone is near a beach, just kind of strengthen your Achilles, strengthen your ankles, strengthen your ability to push the curve when you're running around. So, you know, get to a local field or a local beach and map out a circle and look like a big weirdo, and you get loads of strange looks from people, but you'll be staying away from the curve when you get back to the high jump pit, no doubt.
And it might even be better. That's what I remember when the lockdown happened last year. I actually said this is great, because now we can take the pressure off of no competitions, just focus on technique.
Focus on technique.
So for the young ones out there, thanks Deirdre, that's fabulous.
Or just even drills, you know, like learning like walking drills, running drills, working on your core and your technique. And, you know, some of the best years, like the year, what was it, Lucy, like maybe 2000, some of the best years you have are the years where you're coming back from an injury, you focused on prehab, rehab and technique, and like visualizing and technique, and you know, sometimes they're the best years you have, like being away from having the break of the mental pressure of the bar, you know. So, you know, it's not all the time isn't lost. It can be used elsewhere, I think.
Yeah, it's true. I see Dave has put up, just if anyone hasn't seen it, he's put up a link there. Dave, do you want to say anything here? The ladies frighten you with all their chatting. I'm very quiet. Don't be shy, Dave.
Yeah, I'm totally overwhelmed here, so I am. No, actually, you know something, this is actually a fantastic conversation, and there's so much that you can take away from this tonight, I think. And, you know, it's just fantastic to listen to Deirdre and Janet and Ursula and Wendy and everybody there. It's just amazing. But a couple of the things that hit me really was one, that there's a massive need for training hubs, you know, for people training together. And, you know, I can see how much you guys all fed off each other. And it reminded me of, there was a similar group in Dublin of throwers, and they were all mostly training with Phil Conway. And I think maybe about 8 of those guys made the Olympic Games, either Olympics or World Championships, you know. So, and it was the value, and it was like, maybe Janet was saying, like, you didn't have anything really, but you lived, slept, and you breathed the event, and you just motivated each other so much. And it's like, and what you were saying as well, like when you if you didn't turn up to training, you were letting somebody else down. And I think what happens a lot at the moment is that we're all training on our own, and there is some fantastic talent around the country, but they're all doing it in little pockets, and we all need to come together. And but that was the first point I thought, was the need for training hubs. And the second point I thought was the need for professional coaches, and the impact that, say, Wendy and your mum and Norman Brooke in particular, you know, that he just had a massive impact. And then obviously Deirdre, you know, she was brought up to like 192 with Lucy, but then there was the need to go and find maybe a better training environment, better training partners, and she went to Germany, and yeah, so that was huge. But I think it's not all just up to the athletes and the coaches and the hubs. You know, I think the athletes, it is about eating, sleeping, and drinking the event, and about educating yourself and just become totally immersed in it. And but one of the questions I was going to ask the guys is, there's a lot of talk these days about the transition from junior into senior athletics, and how you kind of manage that transition. And like, say, Janet, for example, there you were saying you didn't really start until you were about 15, whereas Ursula maybe started a lot younger.
No, I didn't really. I had started training at the age of 19, and I hit the senior ranks within 6 months. I never competed as a junior at all.
Really?
I competed in high school for my school team.
Yeah.
But I just went and did that, and then I left. I mean, there was nothing, there's no continuity or anything. I just showed up on Thursday nights, and finally Molly taught me to jump, but that's all I did. And then summer was over, I'd go back to what I was doing before, which was swimming and dancing.
Yeah. But one of the questions I was kind of thinking about is, like, how did you keep going, and how did you afford to do it? How did you manage your time? Like, you were obviously going to college.
Yeah, that's actually what I thought we would probably want to get into today. I kept going for 10 years, largely because I didn't start till I was late. I mean, by the time Ursula was 19, she'd already been jumping for 6 years. I hadn't. So I had literally got 10 years at top class. The college years were fine because I was in college, and sorry, I got something in my line. We had time, and we breathed and slept it. We really did, and it was okay then. Once that's over and you have to start earning a living, because that's, I mean, there was no, you had to pay your way, you had to pay your rent, buy your food, put petrol in your car, you know.
Yeah.
What I did was I worked part-time for quite a few years, and I took jobs here and there that would allow me to still do my athletics. I would, you know, do 3 months here, 6 months there. I got 4 different part-time jobs on the go. and I just managed my time as best as I could. Then when there was a kind of a point came for me, which I think is what Deirdre was alluding to, where she was able to say, okay, I need to go from here to Germany. That point came for me too, where I need the kind of group that we had as training partners was coming apart. People were getting married, people's jobs were sucking them in, this kind of thing happened, and it left me, probably Mark, with suddenly our whole team that we had to work together was disintegrating around us. Norman had moved on by then as well. I certainly was able to work with Frank Dick, yeah, thanks, Frank Dick, as the national coach. Now, what I did was I went across to him maybe once every couple of months to London, and he would come to Belfast occasionally and to do jump sessions with me. But the problem is he would show up at the track to do jump sessions with me, and everybody would be, you know, hogging him and asking him questions about all kinds of other stuff. So it wasn't greatly successful. He would send me sessions to do, which was twice a day training, which I did. I was stronger and fitter than I'd ever been. But my core group of people to train with was disintegrated. And I did go, like Deirdre did, I went to Krasnodar place in Russia, and I trained with the Russians for a couple of weeks. It wasn't for very long, but it certainly opened your eyes to, they had facilities that were old, dilapidated, falling apart, indoor facilities with everything that works. They were so old they were falling apart, and we didn't have it at all. And those girls were pushing weights like you couldn't believe. Then when it came to the Commonwealth Games in '90, I actually went to Australia for 6 months in advance of that Commonwealth Games. Again, it was completely ad hoc. All of this was ad hoc because there was no funding for anything. I went to Australia because my cousin lived in Australia, and she allowed me to stay in her house for 6 months. And Norman gave me sessions to do, and he put me in touch with a group of people at the track there, and they were kind enough to let me just work in with them. And when I got there, we got on, they liked me, and they just kind of adopted me as one of their groups. So I had a new training group. I did my sessions, but I had new people to be at the track doing things. Whether we were doing all the same thing necessarily, no, but we were all at the same time together. But to go to the next level, I needed some, to go from 192 to 2 meters, which I personally think could have happened, but there was no way for me to find the right international people to go and train with. There was no way for me to fund it without working, and if I had to work, I had to go back home and work. Or I don't know how to do the next step. I didn't know then, and I still don't know how. If I look at what, I mean, I don't really know what's going on in Ireland and UK a whole lot now because I've been out of that system for so long. But I know what goes on here, and we can certainly learn from the good parts and learn from the bad parts as well. They have in schools in America, from what I've seen, fantastic facilities. Like this little high school where I coach, they have a weights room, a pool, a track. They've no indoor place to jump, but they've got gyms, and they've got mats, they've got everything. But each school has that. So they're all in their own little silos, and the coaches, they are very possessive of their own athletes. These are our school and that's your school, and we won't, to me, we should have a Molly Phillips situation where anybody from any school comes and jumps together in one place, but they don't like that. And I don't think that territorialism is unique to here. I think it's pretty worldwide from what I've seen. And I'm talking about high school coaches whose job it is to teach English or something else. They're doing this as a voluntary basis. Once you go to college here, if you get a scholarship, say you're a good high jumper in high school and you get a college scholarship to go, and that gives you some money to be a high jumper in that college, and while you get your degree, they will pay you. But those coaches, once you move to that level, they are professional coaches, and their salaries dependent on how well the team does. So they are more interested in the team doing well than in Deirdre Ryan's Achilles injury, right? They are more interested in making sure Deirdre Ryan jumps and jumps high than whether her Achilles is doing the right training. And maybe it's maybe a gross generalization, but once you bring a financial incentive into it from the coach's point of view, or even the athletes, the whole dynamic changes. And what happens here is, I have no idea how they get an American team. It's completely ad hoc. It's really completely ad hoc. There's a lot of kids around here that are very talented, very hardworking, and do great, but they're not going to be Olympic athletes. But they could be jolly good coach, jolly good club athletes, but there's no club system at all.
Yeah.
At all. So, I mean, to get back to what you were saying about the pandemic situation, and I don't get paid for coaching at all in the school, so I can go to whatever school I want and I can coach whatever kid I want. Unfortunately, I work with a coach in the school who's a like-minded. He's just a track guru groupie, and he's fine to let me do that. But because of the pandemic this year, they wouldn't let us use the school facilities. They said, no, you can't have the high jump, you can't go on the track, you can't do anything. So what I did was I took the diehard group that want to train, and we went to local parks 4 days a week after school for an hour and a half, and we got weights jackets, and we did squats and lunges, and we did it in the picnic shelters if it rained. We ran up the hills, and we did everything outside 4 days a week. Nobody got injured, nobody got sick, but we couldn't actually jump or do any sort of much in the way of plyo stuff because, well, the weather and the conditions is just not, it's not great. I mean, I didn't want them doing that on concrete. So we bought a high jump mat, and we rented a space in a tennis club for one tennis court, and they allowed us to store the mat in there for free, and they just charge us to rent the tennis court. So we rent the tennis court once a week, and those kids have been jumping once a week all through. It's not perfect, but it's not bad at all. It's really not bad at all. And they love it. There's no money involved anywhere. They come because they love it. I go because I love it, and we've just have an opportunity to do it. And the people who've bought into helping us aren't really charging us much at all to rent the court, and as I say, storing the stuff is for free. But it's completely ad hoc. So I maybe have this little core group here, but if you drive 4 hours north from here, there is a facility called Spire, which is the most phenomenal facility you will ever imagine. So 400 meter, 350 something indoor track, pool, Olympic size pool, weights rooms, everything you could imagine. It's like an athlete's dream, but it sits there empty because it's in the middle of nowhere and you can't afford to use it. It's just, it's so insane. The whole structure is insane. I wish I could buy it. I mean, it's just phenomenal. It's phenomenal. So it's not just having the facilities isn't enough, having the athletes isn't enough, having the coaches isn't enough, and having no money isn't enough either. There has to be some better way to coordinate the whole thing.
It kind of needs a couple of Pied Pipers really to drive the whole thing on, really.
It does.
And collaboration. I think the big thing is collaboration. Like I was talking to Deirdre Liam now, and I don't know if Martin O'Grady's here, and Cormac, because Cormac's there as well, and just getting people to say, hey, look, we'll share our facilities, we'll collaborate. Like when we get out of this lockdown, we'll just start with jumping events to get people jumping. And for coaches too, I know, because I see Fiona's on here, Fiona Kelly, maybe Gwen is on. There's a few of us coaches already doing it down here, not just for high jump, but for other things. And it's fun. You have a laugh. You're down the track together, it's,
David, can I jump in there, David, on one thing you mentioned there about, I think really around, the transition of athletes and going from, junior to senior, and, there is a huge, so many studies there on the drop off of young athletes, and particularly young female athletes. And I think high jump, particularly if you look at the trajectory of most high jumpers, they plateau for a number of years because like, as we all know, high jump is very much like a kind of a power weight ratio kind of thing, and bodies changing and people getting used to their new power and their new strength and their new, and and it does require a lot of resilience. So I'm sure there's probably a number of high jumpers on the line tonight maybe who haven't had a PB for 2-3 years, and I'm sure Janet, Wendy and Sharon and all have had a few plateau years that can be difficult to go through. But I think, then you get to a point in your career and your life where potentially you're going to college then, or you're going into secondary school, or you're moving from college to a job, and you're thinking, I haven't had a PB in a couple of years, and it becomes a bit of a binary decision, black and white. Do I do my job? Do I go to college, or do I do high jump? And I think that's a big thing that we need to look at, because it doesn't have to be a this or that decision, And I think it's important, to kind of understand that, like, a lot of athletes have been there, gone there, and gone to Olympic Games, gone to World Championships, and gone to Europeans, while having, look at Joanne Cuddihy was studying to be, a doctor, while she went to the Olympic Games, and maybe found, there's ways of finding flexibility within it to kind of maybe study a few modules and do a few other modules. And I think the universities are being increasingly flexible in how they, how they approach these things, and there's partnerships that the AAI can develop with these universities to ensure that kind of flexibility is built in. Or leaving cert year, like, I never missed a training session during my leaving cert year, and I fully believe that I did a much better leaving cert because I was down at the track with the DSD gang every single day doing my training session before I did my thing. So it's not an and/or situation, and I think you can have it all. You can have your career. I worked throughout all my like, I think I took 1 year where I didn't work, but my best years were years where I worked, and I did have a career in a profession as well. Now, it might not be the highfalutin career that you might like, that you might want. It might have to be something flexible, and might have to be, but particularly in high jump, where it's an event that you do need recovery, you do need to be rested. And and I know Summer Lecky's on the line now, and she's working as well. And it's also important to keep your foot in it, even if it feels like you might want to kind of give up. You haven't had a PB in a few years. Stay involved. There's a great social element to it. Just stick with it for a couple of years, and you get so much other things from it. It might not be the PB you wanted, but like in a couple of years you might get the PB, and you have and it doesn't mean you have to give up your career, or you have to give up university or your leaving cert. They're all things that like work together. So I think that's important. While we say you need to be totally involved in it, I was totally obsessed with high jumping, but I certainly had friends that were involved in so many other areas and different things as well. So I think that's important. Just stick with it, whether if it's going well or not, because particularly high jump can be one of those mental events that you just, I don't know, you might have a few plateau years and it does your head, and you might be in the best shape ever, but you just can't get to where you are. Like,
Deirdre, did you ever hit a point where it was like, okay, I'm walking away from this now? Because when you give up because the injuries, it was the body kind of.
There would have been plenty of times where you just thought, like, and it wouldn't have been an overarching, like, I was actually going to do it. I spoke about it a lot. I spoke about giving up a lot when I was like, coming back from an event where I think I had 4 or 5 years where I was like 175, 175, 175, 177, 176, 175, and I was like, and then I got a 181, an 84, an 87, an 89. So I kind of, it was 4 or 5 years where I did wonder, like, is this, it's not much fun now. So you kind of have to think about what the other elements are that you're enjoying. There's a huge social aspect to it, and your friends are down at the track, and it's broadening your, you might not be competing at your best self that year, but it's broadening yourself, and it's broadening everything else that's in your life, instead of just focusing on just school or just whatever else. So of course there were times where you thought, like, what am I doing now? And even when you were a professional athlete, and I think 2008 was the worst year when I didn't make the Olympics, and I had a cast on my leg, and my best friend Tia Hallibout, who I've been training with, that didn't work out well, won the gold medal, and I was thinking, oh my God. But yeah, they were kind of, but you don't have to, you have to make sacrifices to get there, and you have to, but all those sacrifices are great things, you know. They're keeping your body healthy. They're things that you'll use in later life, like, you know, they're teaching you work ethic, they're teaching you loads of great things that, like, it will always stand to you. So, you know, it's just important, I think, to realize that it's not just sacrifice, it's hard work for a good thing, you know, in every aspect of your life. So they're kind of worth sticking through those times, I think.
I think that's so true, Deirdre. You know, you do often hear athletes talking about the sacrifices we have to put up with and stuff like that. But as you say, they are so beneficial as well, you know. And generally, when you look back on your careers, you're probably 90% of it is probably positive, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at the time you're kind of like, yeah, looking back now, you know, you wouldn't have given up a year of it, and you know, at all, like, you know. So
and then the body ages. The big thing, that's what I tell people, look, by the time you're 30 or whatever, that's it. You can never, like, now I would give anything. The only place I jump is up here in my head, you know, and I would give absolutely anything if my body would just get off the ground, you know. And that's what breaks my heart, because when you're young, well, I was clueless, absolutely clueless, and now listening to you, I'm like, why didn't I stick at it? But that's why, for me, the message to the younger crowd is just stick with it. Every single word you've said there, Deirdre, is gold, especially for younger kids. It's absolute gold, and we need to get you to say it again and again and again and again to everyone in the country. It's priceless. It's like the friends you make, the adventures you go on, all the countries in the world you got to go to. You know,
Olivia, I wouldn't say that Olivia was anyway clueless at all. That she has her own story that goes along from, and for a woman to get this going, I think is fantastic.
I've woken up a bit late.
No,
Fiona, that's all.
No, you are just
forever, Olivia.
And also that you had your own story, that you wanted to do high jump, but your career as well, and you weren't allowed to continue, and you did do it through university. So, you know, there is that. A lot of people here were either injury or whatever. But Olivia also is fantastic on a local level here, that she is collaborating with all the clubs.
I paid her big bucks. I paid her big bucks. I give Fiona flowers in the post on Monday.
Myself and Olivia were in the same club as teenagers, and we've only met each other again about 2 years ago in Nina, watching some athletes, and we've been talking ever since, and she's doing great things, and I'm glad to be on board with her.
And I'll just say one thing now, and shut her up. I'll take the yellow box around my name again so she can't talk. That woman there, we used to call her Flo Jo growing up, right? Because she was with Florence Griffith joining. Fiona Kelly Walker, this is my Bula boss Fiona. She's the first person, male or female, in Ireland to ever win a medal at the European Youth Olympics, and she won a silver medal. That's our Fiona. Wow. Now, take a bow, Fiona. Take a bow, and she's so bloody modest. And when I met her in Nina there a couple of years back, she just looked at me, she shook her head, she cried, and she's like, what the hell did I do? You know? And I was like, I know, Fiona, come here.
Why did we give up?
Give me a hug, you know? So that's why me and Fiona go around talking to the young ones now, going, don't give up, the body breaks down, you can't do it anymore. So
and I'll say one last thing, sorry, Liv. We have 2 young ladies on the call here, Clodagh Donahue and Sophie, my daughter, and they're doing a project at the moment for school with regards to teenage dropout. So I'd just like to give them a shout out as to how, you know, they're trying to survey the whole of their local town and figure out between boys and girls as to what happens and why they don't go on after the age of 17 or 18. So there's 1 or 2 people I might probe Olivia for in the next day or two to might answer a few questions for them.
You asked them there, Fiona. There they are.
Fiona, I can help you there. My daughter is 25. She just finished her degree, and that's what her dissertation was in, and she got a first in it and the highest mark ever. So
copy and paste. We'll delete this out of the recording. We won't show them for national school, don't worry.
Thank you, Wendy.
It's okay. Olivia, can I just say, Janet, you'll maybe remember this. Janet got picked to go to an international. This is for the younger ones, just to follow up on Deirdre. Don't give up, you know. And when you plateau or you have a bad competition, just get stuck back in again. Janet went to France, I think, for an international jump 155. Do you remember? She got a British international. She phoned me. I don't know how she phoned me, because phones in those days, all the phones at A's and B's and black, and you just couldn't work out. Public telephones were awful. And she was crying down the phone saying, I'm never going to high jump again. I'm weak. I'm terrible. 155. How can I go to and get a GB?
165.
It was dreadful, and it was poor, right? So the next week was the British Championships, wasn't it? And said, I'm not going. What's the point in going? I'm going to give up. I've done work. This is so embarrassing. And I said, well, you can't do any worse than what.
The board was incredible.
Go and see just what happens and take the pressure off yourself. And that witch broke my Northern Ireland record, and she jumped 185, I think, didn't you, Janet? And she did brilliantly and won. So, sometimes for no reason at all, particularly with girls, you can have a bad competition and you don't really know why or what you did wrong. And then yet, within a week or 2 weeks, it can come back. And it's the same, when you plateau for 2 or 3 years, everybody plateaus, and you can't keep doing the same thing. You have to look at doing something different, which is what Deirdre and Janet and all went on to do. And then you just mix it up again. But we all need to remember, Mary Peters won a gold medal at 33, and she went on to win the next Commonwealth as well at 35. So, if you can manage your injuries, and maybe we all did too much jumping or too much plyometrics or something, if everybody ended up having injuries, is to do quality when it comes to your jumping, rather than a lot of quantity. Janet also, that you might know, was an excellent ballet dancer, even though she was 6 foot tall, but she did ballet pumps with her and did a lot of exercises as well, so I think it's important, and I would love to work with David, who's still on, and it's obviously a bit of a girl since he's in with all the girls here as well. Whatever we can do to help or to move it forward, I would love, because I still have a passion for high jump all these years later. My daughter actually competed and was fortunate enough to compete with you, Deirdre, and we just stood there and all. I think Anna maybe did 155, and you came in at maybe 185. Whatever it was just fantastic to see you reach such great heights. And the same, Sharon, who hasn't got to speak much here, was nearly my nemesis, and she went on to jump brilliantly, get to 2 Commonwealth Games, got 2 medals, was a fantastic jumper, didn't have the benefit of our group in Belfast all jumping together. But we can do it. We've got the talent here, and let's do it for high jumpers for a change, and let's do it for the girls. So well done.
Well done, Wendy. And while you're all here, and I didn't, because I had planned just to meet the women first in the room before bringing everyone in, but sure, look, I got lazy. I let everyone in all in drips and drabs. But I was going to say, there has been a request from a few younger girls and their parents and coaches, would we just get a call going, sorry Dave, sorry Paul, sorry Liam, all the other men, where it's just women only, and especially like yourself, Deirdre and Janet, where ye can talk to the younger girls. And I don't know if some are here, and Pippa and Aoife O'Sullivan, I think they're online too, to talk to the likes of Clodagh and Sophie, and I can't even remember the other girls' names, and just if you're interested in doing that, and
leave Olivia, why don't you just leave it as a slot at 6 o'clock on a Saturday for a couple of weeks if they want to just something like that, and happily jump in and chat to people.
That's a good idea.
There's another thing that we all got out of it. I mean, Sharon and Wendy and Ursula and myself might be, we're pretty darn old by now, but we are all still friends. So we have gone, well, maybe you're young at heart, Wendy, but compared to the ones that are, you got your wine, good. I got my water too, but we have gone through a lot of years together and gone through a lot of things in our lives together, and had enough of a contact back then that we can still come together and help each other, whether or not we've talked to each other in the years in between or not, because we forged friendships that mattered at a time in our lives, and we spent a lot of intense time together. And the gain out of that, at least for me personally, has just been immense. I mean, I'm still here, but my friends are still my athletics friends from Ireland. That's where they are. I don't know how you feel about that, Sharon. You're away too, but that
exactly the same.
It's never going to be the same.
Well, it's funny because I haven't heard your voice. I said to my daughter Laura, I think you came to London to see me when I just had Laura.
I did.
She's
No,
28.
no. Wow.
She's 28 this year. No, she's 29 this year. And I said to her, because I told her we were doing this, I said, I hadn't heard your voice. And I was going through old Facebook messages, and one popped up from 10 years ago when you said, I've just been laughing my head off listening to you and Norman and you talking about fancying all these gay men. It's just picked up where we left off. You know, I haven't spoken to Norman in years, but I know, like you, I could pick the phone up now. And because we had all that history, you know, being in foreign countries together was a big thing. You know, the one that stuck out to me was Stuttgart. The qualifying was like 8 o'clock in the morning. So we had to be up at like 6. I can't get my bloody slap on before 6 o'clock in the morning. And to me, that was important then. And that's why I jumped like a donkey and you didn't, because you were dedicated. You know, I did the bare minimum. I was lucky to have lots of that natural talent. That was my one claim to fame. I never trained as hard as you lot did. You know, and I can remember Mrs. Kyle saying to me, if you just, you know, did that little bit more. I mean, it's
gosh, Maeve Kyle, gosh, you're someone.
Well, my career started with Mrs. Kyle, and I still call her Mrs. Kyle to this day, because I went to Cambridge High School for Girls. She came there as a relief geography teacher and thought, oh, I like the look of that big, tall, skinny one. And so she had me doing, I used to do pentathlons in the middle of a football pitch. When a match was going on in the middle, we would do the running bits of the pentathlon, and then when the footballers finished, we could do the other bits of, you know. And she spotted me at school when I was 15 and said, yeah, but I was an Irish dancer, so that was my first love. So she made me do all these events, and I thought, oh, I'm not having this. So I used to get my friend to wait outside the front door to make sure she wasn't there, so I could do a runner to get the bus, so I didn't have to train. And then she caught on to it, of course, and she went and waited at the back door one day, and then I went to the front. And if it hadn't been for her, I never would have got into athletics. And Sean took me away when I was 17. I got invited to compete in Canada, and I had never left Northern Ireland. And it was an education in itself. We spent 2 weeks in Canada, and he took me to a different nationality restaurant every night. Nothing to do with athletics, so that was our break. I would compete, and then every night he was educating me. That was my education. I was a lazy bugger at school. I did nothing, you know, education-wise, but that was my life. You know, and then I met Janet and all that lot, and, you know, Ursula was the troublemaker, obviously. You know, her being in bloody Brisbane was like, don't turn your back on her. If she disappears, we're the ones that'll get, because we were, you know, looking after her. Of course, Janet, being the sensible one, did all the looking after.
No, I wasn't in Brisbane. It was Judith.
That was oh God, it was Judith. Of course it was. Oh my God. Well, she is quite sensible. Yeah. But it was a different life. I mean, okay, we didn't have the pressures that the young ones have these days. I think some of them do get pushed.
They do.
Too far, too soon. You know, and you know, with Mrs. Kyle, she would take me to competitions and we'd have our geography lesson. So there was always a sort of fun side to it. You know, I did train reasonably hard, I thought. You know, I was sick quite often at the side of the track when I was made to run over 200 meters. My body wasn't built to run 200 meters. But I did it. And it's partly to do because I was hungover from the night before. But like you said earlier, I still turned up. Well, probably because she'd got a message to me somehow saying, if you're not on the track today, you know what's going to happen. So, and I was terrified of the woman. So I'd be there, and then she'd say after, you know, 3 200s, well, you've got hangover, haven't you? And I said, yes. And she'd say, well, you'll do 3 more then. And then I would do what happened the night before at the start of the track. But I loved it. I loved the camaraderie. And as she say, you know, we pick up where we left off, and I just hope the kids today get the opportunity to have
what we
fun.
had.
Yeah, have a bit of fun. I mean, I know there's more pressure on them because there's funding, and you see, we didn't have to worry about that funding business. No. We didn't have to perform to get money. You know, I can remember, God rest his soul, Andy Norman giving me a £50, God, it was £10 notes or whatever, 50 quid at Crystal Palace once, and I thought, what's that for? And he just went, your expenses. And I was just about to open my mouth and say, well, I haven't got any expenses because Northern Ireland paid for my flight, and somebody else is picking up the Queen's Hotel bill. And that was the first I knew people got paid at all. And that was probably because he was trying to get me away from Tim at the time, I think, because he called me the man eating high jumper. So maybe there wasn't a cause of it. But we didn't have, you know, you performed because you wanted to do well and you wanted to do well for your country.
Right.
You didn't, you know, you didn't have to jump well so they, get a little grunt from somebody. So it is different. There's different pressures on the young ones today, sadly.
Yeah, different pressures now with everybody in COVID now. So it's really,
God,
great, Olivia, and all the team for kicking off this.
But you're not going anywhere, Deirdre.
No.
We're holding on to you. You're back now. You said it every Saturday, 6 o'clock.
Do you know what, Olivia, David, it'd be, I'm sure you've loads of people now online between Ursula, Sharon, Wendy, myself, and Janet. Whatever way you want to work it, I'm sure everyone.
I think definitely we have
motivated here to whether you want everyone to take a Saturday or have a few athletes pick up with a few different coaches or whatever way you want to work it. I'm sure it sounds like everyone's kind of happy to do it, whatever way you think works best. Of course, it's not
it would be fantastic.
Maybe not every Saturday with everyone, but if you want me to kind of come on next Saturday, talk to a few athletes individually, or if you want to put me in touch, David, with a couple of athletes that need a bit of guidance, happy to do that. Be it a Zoom, be it a pop out to Abbottstown or whatever else you need. I think there's loads of people here that seem motivated to kind of help out, and whatever, be it a Zoom, be it an in-person or a phone call or a text or whatever else, you've kicked it off now and you've loads of people motivated, I think, to kind of help out. So if you do need anything, just let us know.
We'll get Janet over as well. You pop over as well, Janet. Get your mat.
No, I want to come. I just can't because of COVID. I was supposed to. I go every year, and we're looking at September right now. But they have to be quarantined. This is not going to work. But any way I can help anybody, I'm more.
Yeah, and I know you're not always free on a Saturday, Janet. And I know you're going off coaching now soon, coaching the kids. So Guys,
it's fantastic here. Just and Deirdre definitely will take you up on that option, and Wendy as well, and
be it out in Abbottstown or whatever, or a phone call to a few athletes, or if you want us to come back on in another few weeks, or if you want to come back on next week, just let us know. We'll divide and conquer, and whatever you need.
You come up with ideas too, though, Deirdre. That's what I'm saying. This is for everyone. It's not a one person show, And if you say, hey, next week I'll do a talk on, to be honest, Deirdre, even just what you said there about writing the alphabet in the sand. Well, I've never heard of that. That's brilliant. And you now that's simple, but that's just something great. To pick up little tricks like that. Like I'm sure there's a lot of young girls now out to the sandpit or off down the beach.
But you see, there is no young girls on. There's very few young girls on this. This was focused at the higher level, and it should be focused at the up and coming athletes, and that's where you can take the splinter groups off and do that if you want to, and that would be really nice to do because there's a lot of coaches here or athletics, Ireland and the whole lot, but to take it off and have more local coaches and get the kids on. So Dave could send it out to many clubs and say it's not,
Javier.
It's Deirdre, right? Fantastic, I must say. But to tell the clubs now that Deirdre's on and Wendy's on and and that if you want to ask them questions, the kids can ask questions or the local coaches can.
Yeah. And I see who's just popped in here, sorry, is Lillian. So you can say hello, Lillian, because we're just talking about the girls only. She's just popped into the room. She's probably gone quiet now because
I'm sorry, Olivia. I literally was spending time with my granny and I completely forgot to tune in. I hope you're flying it.
Oh, we're getting on great, Lillian. We're talking about women taking over Athletics Ireland and the world.
Oh, we're not.
Those kind of talks,
Especially high jumpers.
Fiona, you're absolutely right, because the young girls or young boys, anybody from Ireland or indeed anywhere else, but we're talking about the ones from Ireland. I mean, we can talk and listen to Javier and the things that he had, but it's not the same as saying, well, Sharon and Ursula and me and Wendy and Deirdre, we're from down the road. We're that little kid,
Yes.
And the little kid is no different today from the one we were, and this is how we did it, and you can do it too. We're not someday like we can all sit here in awe of Javier. You don't have to sit here in awe of us because we are you and you are us.
I think where you can take it to next is for some of the junior ones and also for myself is where things go wrong, when you've got problems and how do you fix them. And all the conference I've gone to, nobody ever talks about that. You see, when somebody gets the yips, Janet Boyle, if Debbie Mars, Debbie McJoel was on here, should be telling you that we spent 3.5 hours standing at the track one day because Janet used to grab the bar and not jump, and Norman wouldn't leave until she jumped over the jump, and we had to sit there and wait for 3.5 hours, and they argued the whole time. And you know, I have had athletes that have had the yips and not taken off, and one of them took 4 years to try and fix it, and then finally worked out, a bit slow as a coach, that she's right underneath the bar. But once you get things psychologically into your head, how do you kind of fix it? And lots of the juniors, and I'd like Deirdre to ask her this, Ursula and I, when we jumped, you know, every week indoors in a school gym, we did lots of 3 and 5, you know, all through the winter, where some coaches think they shouldn't do all 5. But for us, it worked, didn't it, Ursula? And I think it taught us to be quicker and faster over the bar. But maybe some of the young ones want to ask about the approach and the curve, and what things do you really concentrate on? Is it driving your knee? Is it your upper shoulder? Or what are you doing wrong? How do you stop yourself turning your back, you know, before you go over the bar? And those are all things for maybe another day where we can talk about problems, how you fix them, how you progress from being a junior. Do you go off 5 strides, then back to 7, back to 9? Some people run in, some people go with a standing start, you know, and it just fits different people. So there's an opportunity then, hopefully going forward, for the younger ones to ask questions that they feel they need to progress even to the next stage, you know, from junior and upwards, you know.
And you know, I don't want to, Martin, do you want to turn on your microphone there, Martin O'Sullivan? Because you've asked, I know Deirdre has gone off there, but you can ask Janet.
Yeah, I suppose just a few questions there, just having such a pool of talent there of women jumpers, you know, and I think you're just hitting on it there, Wendy, about the arms. I'm kind of an anorak at the moment about the arm shift, and I see Janet there. You had was it a double shift you had? Deirdre had a kind of a one arm, and you know, when you're working with new jumpers, they're kind of coming in, and they all have different ways of jumping. So you're kind of saying, do I change them? Do I, let's say this is the way to do it, or do you just let it evolve into the way it naturally happens? That's like, you know, let's say
I was a double arm shifter, but I never remember actually learning to do anything with my arms until I was in a training camp in Portugal, and John Allen started making me think about my arms, and all it did was make things worse. I started being like an airplane, and it took me a while to get out of the airplane situation. I've learned a lot more about what I was doing by actually coaching kids over the past few years, and it's really interesting. I don't do much with their arms at all. What I do is I watch them, and then I try to figure out the best way for that kid to jump, because they're all different. And no technique is absolutely the 100% best way for all people. Everyone's built a little differently, and it's just trying to maximize what is best for each individual kid. And it might be that I see more people doing the one arm thing lately than there used to be, I think. But it's, I don't think one is necessarily better over the other. It simply depends on what kind of...
I agree. Janet and Stephen Home actually said that he didn't do a double arm shift, and yet Svetlana, if you look at her, you know, she's tremendous and pulls back. But sometimes if you focus too much on the arms, you forget to plant, you forget to drive. You know, Ursula never did a double arm shift, so you didn't. You just went over the bar and went into fabulous hyper. I never hypered over the bar. I lay out over the bar. So I think possibly the best thing to do is people find their own natural way to jump, and then you just keep trying to improve. So, and they used to say to me for years, you know, you have to plant this way and that way, and you're striking the ground. And I'm going, if I think about that too much, it's 1/100th of a second. You know, where you learn it all is in your drills, you know, and your reactive drills that you're doing to be able to strike off the ground. But if you're saying now you need to plant your foot at this angle or that angle, you can't do that in a split second. It's all done, you know, in your plyometrics and your training. but everybody jumps different. Dick Fusby didn't have a hyper, you know, and his arms were stuck beside him like this. You actually thought he was doing Irish dancing over the bar. His arms were stuck. You know, whereas other people, if you look at Barshim, he jumps a bit like Ursula, where he gets up on the height and then really bends his head over the bar and has very, very fast feet. So even in that video that we have that, you know, we can share the link of, all the girls jump slightly different, you know, so to that end, I wouldn't always, you know, condone or disagree with the way a child jumps, because lots of things come naturally, and lots of runners and sprinters don't always have the best mechanics. In fact, some of them are woeful, and yet their fast twitch fibers are so much greater, you know.
It's great. Yeah, thanks, Wendy.
Thanks, Wendy. It's common sense. What do you want to do? I know, Janet, as I say, you have to go coaching. Is it far away you're driving to?
No, it's not far. I'm going to go in about 10 or 15 minutes.
Yeah. So, what do you want to do? Do you want to come on and just chat next week?
Sure.
Yeah, and Wendy, as we could say, we could have the focus around what goes wrong, how to fix it.
Yeah.
You know.
Maybe if people have, sorry, Wendy. I was going to say, if people have specific questions, send them in up front so that we don't sort of drift off all over the place, and we can maybe answer the actual questions people want to, or at least discuss the things people want to know about. It's pretty hard. I mean, we could come on and talk, but we'll just talk stories, and maybe that's not what they're interested
in. Someone said here, Niamh has a question. Is that you, Niamh? Liam Kelly says that.
Yeah, hi Liv.
Is that you? Sorry, Niamh. I'm not following the chat things. I'm really sorry. I need a secretary.
It was more of a comment, really, and just to say thanks to all the ladies. It was brilliant to hear all their experiences. I mean, I'm not really a high jumper. I was a multi-eventer once, a very average one, but just I suppose the general comment about like the grassroots side of things and young athletes. Like, I think it's really, really important for young athletes. Like, I think one like negative comment from a coach can really affect them. And like, I know I would always have taken things really to heart and been really sensitive about stuff, and particularly young girls. And I think that's something that we should really work on. And in the small group like chats, that would be really brilliant if the athletes and the coaches could, just chat a bit more about that. And I suppose that was it really. And thanks to you, Liv, for all your brilliant work in organising as well.
And Niamh was a great international hurdler as well. You are now, and she's great. She helps me out an awful lot and backs me on the back as well. And myself and even Fiona do a bit of, I don't know what we're doing for the teenagers here, cross sport. It's not just athletics now, it's just getting young girls, it's all girls, getting them going. So thanks, Niamh. Yeah. So will we do that then, Wendy? Same time, same place, same channel? Yeah. Yeah,
and we'll listen to what everybody else wants to ask, and we'll do our best to answer all the questions.
Yeah, and what I'll do is I'll send out an email. I have most people's emails addresses. If I don't, let me know. It's Facebook here, or contact Dave. Sorry, Dave, giving you more work to do. Contact Dave or Lillian or whoever, or your RDO, and Paul McKee. We'll get Paul McKee doing a few jobs as well. He's falling asleep in the corner after this. So
he loves jobs, Olivia.
He loves jobs.
Loves jobs. He's always first.
Hand up. I saw he had his hand up, Lillian. He had his hand up. Me, please.
And if it's a good bunch of women, he's definitely up front. Like.
Now you're talking. No, I think it's been brilliant. The 2 hours that flying, bit of catching up with some real good expertise. It started off, a lot of, no matter what event you're in, you would have enjoyed it because you're talking about key principles. So that could be high jump, long jump, triple jump. It could be a sprint and endurance, And I took home some good messages from it. To really get the very top consistency is so important. You can get so far. I got as far as was possible without consistency. That's nearly what I took home from it. You need this year in, year out to really get to the top. The high performance units, there's different ways to describe them, but listen to some of the Wendy's girls there. They made their own high performance units. So there's different types of high performance units, and you do need one of some degree working with you, a bit of a team coach, maybe a couple of training partners, the right medical setup and different things like that. That would definitely help. we tried to have it a little bit at Mary Peters. You know, my coach, like, you wouldn't even know what club he was in. Bill was Lisburn, but it could have been, if there's 12 of us, there's probably 9 different clubs. I just took that for granted. But a lot of them worked full time, so it wasn't the finished article. It was halfway there, so we got some success out of it. I think Deirdre's point to her best year was when she had her best conditioning. I think that's very important as well. I had a 400-meter talk on here a couple of months ago, and Ailey Doyle's coach was on, David Gillick was on, Paddy Fay, who coached Joanne Cuddy, the Irish records on, and the conditioning was really, really through the roof. That was a big take home for that. I know it's 400-meter running, but I think it does stand by. And even listening to the injuries and all, it might have helped some of that. Obviously, if you condition too much, maybe you could get an injury, but everything has to be done right and progressive and things like that. So the conditioning, the high performance unit, the consistency, and then the other one was having a good relationship with the coach. Even without directly saying that, they all seemed to get on with the coach and have a lot of respect for them. So the relationship would grow, and the coach was open to getting help from other people. So that's big take homes I took. Then towards the end of the night, is getting a wee bit more into the specifics of the high jump. That's where I get lost. But I think that will be how this evolves as well. Though I think as well have to get more, get follow on from that. Especially there's a couple of girls asking to come in and get advice from us and stuff, so you can go into some specific details.
And we put up the video of you jumping. You put it up on the Facebook group. And next week we're going to analyse that one. Yeah, that's what we did wrong, Wendy. We look at the first video up. Will be Paul McKee.
I could run 45 seconds for 400, but can only high jump 135. So I do appreciate it.
We'll get you to 145. We'll get you to 145, Paul. We'll get you up to 145. Yeah.
So yeah, no, great initiative. I hope it does keep going strength to strength and get some good spin off from it.
Well, it's the women. There's great women on here now too. Yeah. So yeah, so we'll just keep the lines of communication open, and that's.
Yeah, like the women are booming at the minute. They are, and some of the other events, the 800 meters and things, it's going very strong. So
yeah,
keep it going.
And we'd encourage the other girls as well. I see Aoife Sullivan is here in the corner of my screen. Thanks, Aoife. You came in there a bit late too. I see, or maybe you were on earlier and popped out. Yeah. So this is all for you, Aoife, and all the other girls. So I'm not leaving out anyone yet. So it's just all Aoife.
Well done, everyone. Well done, everyone.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks, Olivia. You're not at all. See you. Yeah, see you. Best of luck. Lovely meeting you, Janet and Ursula. Really lovely. Yeah, really lovely.
Hi, Sharon. Nice to see you.
Yeah.
I'll catch